Whoa, hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. And yeah, we're doing another madness bracket. This time it's Death Grips. We're doing Death Grips. Sorry, I'm getting a little loud there. oh, back. What's going on with my back? Stretching out the old back. All right, guys. We're going to go through this bracket over here. I'm going to plow through it. I've picked a lot of these picks beforehand, but I am going to try to go into my reasoning behind some of this. Kind of disappointed that there weren't that many tracks on here from the first half of the powers that be, but I don't know. Still, it's not a bad bracket. It's not a bad bracket. We got 4 quadrants over here, and let's go through it. All right, first quadrant, first set of tracks. I'm going to start in the upper left-hand corner over here. I ended up going with Anne Bonny over Full Moon Death Classic. It was a hard first pick, honestly. Mostly because I love the drums and I love the vocals on Full Moon so much, and it's such an incredible Death Grips track in general. Like it's such a good, I guess, start to the band's career in a way. So I ended up going with Anne Bonny over Full Moon, mostly because I find the multiple phases of that track so interesting and so cool. I don't know, just the Ride's vocals, the various instrumental switch-ups on the track. It's definitely one of their more cutting-edge and, I guess, futuristic songs, in my opinion. Some people give me shit, like I don't like Government Plates at all, but there are actually quite a few tracks in there I think are fantastic, and Anne Bonny's definitely one. I ended up going with Break Mirrors over Lord of the Game. I do love Lord of the Game, but I've always felt that song did go on a little long, which is just maybe kind of a nitpicky reason to prefer one over the other, but I do think I Break Mirrors with My Face in the United States is one of the craziest, most insane, and most intense songs Death Grips has ever made as well, so it does have that going for it. I mean, I break mirrors with my face in the United States. I break mirrors with my face in the United States. I went Punk Weight over Deep Web, which was not really that hard of a pick because Deep Web has always been one of my least favorite tracks on No Love, so it's whatever. Went with The Fever over Big Dipper, not just because Big Dipper is not really one of my favorite Death Grips tracks, but as you guys may already know, The Fever is one of my favorite The Money Store cuts. I named it, I think, as like my single of the year that it dropped. Bubbles Buried in This Jungle over Beware. Went with Beware on that. Beware. Although I guess I do say it like that sometimes when I'm like talking fast in a sentence, like, "Hey man, beware, beware of that, beware of that thing over there." But Beware to me is just such a quintessential Death Grips track. I mean, not only are there so many memorable lyrics from that song, the instrumental, it's so psychedelic and trippy and heavy and disturbing and droney. The Charles Manson sample, like there's so many great things about that song, and it's definitely one of the best intro tracks Death Grips has ever done. Went with Houdini over Lost Boys. Houdini is such a fucking banger, and as you guys kind of already know, to me, Bottomless Pit in a lot of ways is many of the same qualities of The Money Store, but kind of updated, which I remember saying in my review. It just kind of feels like, again, Death Grips 2.0 in a lot of ways. Definitely their catchiest record since The Money Store, and just everything is up to fucking 11. Went with Come Up and Get Me over Whatever I Want, because that's just kind of a no-brainer for me. Come Up and Get Me is an incredible intro track, and just that intro distorted bass line and the fucking Come Up and Get Me, like it's such an intense, insane, manic track. Like some of Ride's most insane and animalistic vocal performances are on No Love, and Come Up and Get Me is easily one of the biggest of them. Spikes over Piss Piss, I went with Spikes. And pss, pss, uh, mostly because I just feel like Spikes is just more of a banger. I just really don't have anything else to say about it other than that. I mean, it's just a catchier chorus. I ended up going with not No Love. You Might Think He Loves You. Again, another one of Death Grip's better intro tracks. That glass breaking, the insane synth noises, frickin' Ride's performance, vocal performance on that track. It's all just so intense. It's all just so immense. Again, one of his more manic performances. There's definitely like a tinge of tangible insanity on that song that I just cannot shake. That kind of is almost like frightening on the song. But No Love is a decent deep web track, but still not one of my favorites on the album. Ended up going with, believe it or not, Inanimate Sensation over Culture Shock. I do love Culture Shock. It is one of the smarter and more thought-provoking tracks on Ex-Military, but Inanimate Sensation... Inanimate Sensation is definitely like one of the group's most cutting-edge songs, in my opinion, in terms of the intensity and the abrasiveness of the production, the weird revving vocal line, the like I've never ever heard anybody ever fucking do anything like that in popular music. And for it to sound as insane and as intense as it does, like, I don't know. I remember covering that track and like the bombacity of it when I listened to it was just like, man, I feel like I'm listening to Death Grips for the first time all over again. It was kind of insane. So yeah, I ended up going with Inanimate Sensation over Culture Shock. Then I went with Three Bedrooms over Hunger Games. To me, just kind of the catchier, the more appealing track. Three bedrooms in a good neighborhood. Pretty much the same reason that I picked Hustle Bones. Though again, I do give credit for another Moon track over here. But yeah, Hustle Bones is just kind of hands down, I think, a slightly better song. The revving synths on that track and the like really weird, oddly grooved beat on that track is just I don't know. It's just really it's just kind of like a really uniquely produced track. So many Death Grip songs have like these weird experimental qualities to them that are like totally unique to that specific song. And I don't know. It's part of the reason why the group is so interesting. Obviously, Tachyon gets picked over System Blower, which is kind of unfortunate because System Blower is one of my favorite Death Grips tracks. Tachyon! But if we're talking like both of the songs, like the appeal of both tracks is just like pretty much pure aggression, like pure explosivity. And I don't know, as loud as System Blower is, I feel like Tachyon's vocal performance is kind of what ends up putting it over the top, I ended up going with Bottomless Pit over Why a Bitch Gotta Lie. I feel like the lyrics are not quite as tacky, and I don't know, I just kind of love the distorted tones on there and the relentless beat and the fuck you in half, fuck you in half. It just kind of feels like I don't know, just like an old power noise recording or something like that. To me, this one kind of perplexed me, like Steroids versus Double Helix. Like it's kind of odd that you would throw like a 28-minute remix track in the mix over here when, I mean, you probably could have tossed in like another On the Moon track, but whatever. I ended up going with Double Helix. I mean, I like Steroids a lot, but I feel like it's kind of an odd placement, honestly. And I ended up going with Little Boy over Government Plates. Government Plates, not one of my favorite tracks on the project. And that's pretty much the whole first section over here. I guess rather the first round of the upper left and bottom left quadrants. Let me finish the upper left quadrant over here. Anne Bonny and Break Mirrors. I ended up going with Mirrors. because I just kind of prefer the intensity of that track. The Fever over Punk Weight, obviously, because I mean, if we're talking purely like the Money Store track versus another, I just feel like that's a superior track, better production, better hook, just more, I guess, instantaneous in terms of its eargasm quality. I went with Beware over Houdini. Beware, I said it again. Uh, just kind of a heavier, more trippy, more psychedelic intensity to it. Just feel like it has more lyrically memorable moments on it, like a more iconic song for them in general. Ended up going with Come Up and Get Me over Spikes, just because, again, it's a little more animalistic, a little more intense. Went with Beware. Keep saying it, man. Beware over Come Up and Get Me. And I ended up going with Fever over Mirrors. And then ultimately in this section, I went with the Fever, although I've like totally messed that up now, and I don't know how I'm going to get it back. See, now it's like backwards. I don't even know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do? Oh, okay, never mind. I fixed it. All right, well, there we go. So the Fever is the final one in that upper left-hand corner, which I'm not really surprised about that. Not really surprised about that, given the songs that it was up against. Beyond that, in the lower left quadrant, I ended up going with You Might over Inanimate Sensation. To me, just more insane of a track, more memorable and iconic as far as like the sonic qualities of Death Grip's music. And I don't know, I just cannot shake that music video out of my head either. It's probably one of the weirdest and most disturbing music videos anybody's like ever recorded. Despite the fact that it's not really like a NSFW music video or anything like that, but just the intensity and the crying and the screaming and the laughing, it's just like really uncomfortable and in a really cool way. I guess as cool as being uncomfortable can be. Moving on from there, I ended up, of course, going with Hustle Bones over Three Bedrooms, Tachyon over Bottomless Pit, because Tachyon 666 fuck Doug. Like you can't really fuck with that. And Double Helix over Little Boy. Those are those updates right there. Tachyon over Double Helix. Ended up going with You Might over Hustle Bones. That's that update right there. And then finally I went with Tachyon for the bottom left. So that was my winner down there. So now we're getting close to the final four because I need to finish this upper right and bottom right quadrant over here. Now on GP versus Hothead, I have to go with On GP. It's the most dynamic of the two tracks, and it's maybe the saddest Death Grip song ever. Definitely got to give him credit for that. I mean, it's a supremely suicidal and dark song. Hothead, I think, is great, but it does have like a, I don't know, it does have a tinge of ridiculousness to it, just because of those vocal freakouts, which, depending on what day I'm listening to it, I could be like, hey, this is fucking awesome, this is intense as fuck, or this is a little much. Hacker versus Artificial Death, which is maybe the saddest early pick on the entire page, because Artificial Death is another one of my favorite closers of any Death Grips record, and for it to be put against what I think is probably the best closer of their entire discography sucks, but I ended up going with Hacker. Spread Eagle Across the Block over Birds. That's kind of a no-brainer. I don't know many Death Grip songs, or I guess rather fans, who would disagree with that pick, but just the Link Ray sample on that track, Ride's vocal performance, it's simple. Like there's not a whole lot of editing or adjustment to make the song what it is, but it's just so fucking incredible. Moving on from there, BB Poison versus The Cage. It's kind of funny because both of these tracks are sort of my least favorites on each record, or at least close to being my least favorites on each record. So it was kind of like a weird pick for me. But I ended up going with BB Poison. Just find the production on there just heavier and I guess slightly more interesting. Doesn't get quite as stale. as early on the track. Ended up going with I Want It, I Need It over Two Heavens. Just find the that sample, that riff, and that irresistible beat. So incredible, and just what the song says about just desire and addiction, I feel like is fantastic. Bass Rattle Stars Out the Sky, probably my favorite, if not second favorite track on No Love. Bass Rattle Stars Out the Sky. Fucking love that hook. Went with Giving Bad People Good Ideas over Bitch Please. Bitch Please, you must be smoking rocks. But still, I just find the vocal lines on Giving Bad People Good Ideas and just the relentless distortion and rhythms on that track to be so much more gratifying and exciting. And went with World of Dogs over Electronic Drum Solo, which, again, kind of another weird, like almost like Death Grip's kind of B-side moment that I'm kind of surprised made it into the list over here, but whatever. I'm just going to finish the top quadrant over here. Went with Hacker over On GP. Ended up going with Spread Eagle over BB Poison, which is kind of a no-brainer given what I just said about the track. Ended up going with Bass Rattle Stars, believe it or not, over I Want It, I Need It. I do feel like it's that incredible of a track. And then Giving Bad People Good Ideas over World of Dogs. There are those adjustments there. Ended up going again with Bass Rattle over Giving Bad People Good Ideas. Then Hacker, once again, over Spread Eagle Cross the Block. I do really feel like it's that important of a Death Grips track. I love the driving house beat on the song. I feel like it's got so many memorable and sort of like, I guess, iconic lyrical moments across the track. And I feel like thematically, conceptually, it's really one of the most quintessential Death Grip songs, period. Because it's just so much about being overwhelmed, information overload, hackers, weird people, miscreants, law criminals on the internet. To me, that's just like so much of what Death Grips is all about. So of course, because I'm praising the fuck out of the track, it ended up kind of winning the top right bracket. It really has sort of come to be one of my favorite Death Grips tracks. Which, I mean, it already was, but... All right, let's keep going. Bottom right. Ended up going with Get Got over which I feel like is kind of a no-brainer. Is cool, but it's definitely not... It's no Get Got. It's like such an amazing intro track. That drum loop. And it's one of the few Death Grip songs where, if anybody's like, oh, Ride can't rap, all he does is scream... Like, you could easily show them this song, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, what do you think now? Because, I mean, he's actually got good flow. He can actually rap, and he's not just this dude who screams all the time. And just that synth cycle as well, it's so hypnotic and entrancing. I don't know, it's such a wonderful instrumental. Ended up going with the Powers That Be over Bootleg. To me, two tracks that... I think are both pretty good, not top tier Death Grip songs, but certainly, like B level, I'll say. And I guess I just slightly prefer the Powers That Be over Bootleg, just like the heavier, more intense instrumental on that track. Ended up going with Trash over Fuck That. Fuck That's cool. At one time it was one of my least favorite tracks on the Money Store, but it has grown on me since. But still, I like the theme and the concept of trash so much more because, Death Grips to me is like such an internet-based music group. And trash to me just says so much about the internet and internet culture in general. To sort of see Death Grips kind of commenting on that in such a smart way is fantastic to me. After that, I've seen footage over More Than a Fairy. Because I've seen footage again is just kind of one of those quintessential Death Grips moments because it just says so much about the internet and the group and kind of the ethos of the group in general, like being disturbed by stuff that you can find online and also just being paranoid whether it be out in the world on your own because of Big Brother, police, the powers that be, or just online as well, surveillance, hackers, so on and so forth. Moving on from there, I ended up going with Blackjack over Have a Sad Come, baby. Yeah, I do like Have a Sad Come quite a bit. It is one of the better On the Moon tracks, but to me, Blackjack is just so much sharply written a track. And Have a Sad Come is kind of a weird song to put up against it because it's like kind of like a weird, almost like a weird jam of sorts. But moving on from there, Black Dice over 8080808, which was kind of a no-brainer because that track I think is maybe my least favorite off Bottomless Pit. So even though Black Dice is not one of the best No Love tracks in my opinion, I just kind of ended up going with that one. And then of course Blood Creepin' over Death Grips 2.0, which is kind of, I don't know, it's not my favorite Death Grips outro track, probably one of the weaker outro tracks honestly. So of course Blood Creepin's going to beat it out. And that ended up going with Guillotine. While This Is Violence does have a pretty catchy refrain, I mean, how the fuck are you going to beat Guillotine? You know? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? You know? How's that track going to beat Guillotine? Finishing the bottom right quadrant, ended up going with Get Got over The Powers That Be. Of course, there's that update right there. I've Seen Footage over Trash. Ended up going with Blackjack over Black Dice. Of course, the Money Store tracks are winning out here. You guys know that I love the Money Store quite a bit. And ended up going with Guillotine over Blood Creepin'. And then ended up going with Guillotine over Blackjack. And I've Seen Footage over Get Got. And then finally, I've Seen Footage over Guillotine, which was a really hard pick because, I mean, how the fuck can you say no to that minimal beat at the start? It's so menacing, it's so ominous. Rides, it goes, it goes, it goes, it goes, is pretty fucking fantastic. Like, it's such an iconic moment. But for me, again, thematically, I've Seen Footage says so much more about Death Grips, the internet culture, and just sort of the world I imagine them kind of existing within. Now, as far as the final four over here, believe it or not, despite my love for the Money Store and my celebration of the Fever as Song of the Year when it came out, I did end up going with Tachyon over the Fever. To me, it's a little more lyrically iconic, instrumentally iconic, and it has just kind of shaped up to be one of the group's most important songs. And I ended up going with Hacker over I've Seen Footage because in a lot of ways, the two comparably delve into similar themes, but to me, Hacker is so much more interesting instrumentally and says so much more lyrically. And I feel like it goes down a more interesting, I guess, instrumental road than I think I've Seen Footage does, which in a lot of ways is kind of like an old school, kind of like an 80s rap revival sort of thing, but updated in a lot of creative ways that, you know, you can't really knock it. But Hacker to me was so much more like futuristic, cutting edge. To me has more lyrically iconic moments with the Lady Gaga reference, the Coconuts line, the teaching bitches how to swim, I'm in your area. And to me, it's so much of a sensory overload. And Tachyon versus Hacker, it was a tough pick. You know, I thought about it a lot, but honestly, I ended up going with Hacker. So, I mean, I guess in a way, Hacker is pretty much just like my favorite Death Grips track. So, I don't know. Maybe that'll change. Maybe like a year or two down the road, I'll look at this bracket and I'll be like, Anthony, you fucking idiot. But honestly, after assessing everything and looking at all these songs individually, I pretty much just went with Hacker. So that's it, guys. Hacker, Hacker, Hacker. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you enjoyed this Death Grips bracket. Maybe I'll get a few more done before the month is done, so we kind of keep it in the March Madness spirit, because I have some Brockhampton and Kendrick brackets over here that I might do. All right. You're the best. Death Grips bracket. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, forever.